Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. You know you are welcome anytime. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 14th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. We're here to grow in our journey together. I'm Milan Starcic, and my co-host today is John W. We're two souls on the path of recovery with a desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, John?
I guess what would you like to know?
Well, some people like to describe where they live, how old they are, how long they've been in recovery. Some people want to tell a little bit about their recovery story. It's entirely up to you what you want to share.
Yeah, well, I guess since this is recovery based, I'll start with that story maybe, because there's a lot more to that to the story as a whole, but as far as recovery goes, I was born in Kelowna, BC, was raised by a loving family, a a dysfunctional one for sure, but I've never heard anybody describe their family as functional. Do you know what I mean? I've only people only ever say family's dysfunctional, and so there was a lot of chaos at home. But my parents really loved me, and they fell short for sure at certain times. You know, um, but by any stretch of the imagination, I didn't have a bad childhood. Neither of my parents were alcoholics or addicts. You know what I mean? My dad maybe had some mental illness stuff that was undiagnosed, and my mom's maybe a bit of a neurotic, but nothing um, I would consider incredibly damaging. No reason to suspect that it's their fault or anything like that. And
Or that it was in your genes.
yeah, or that it was
Yep.
genetically disposed to it in any way. I'm sure you could find somebody along the line, but you know, yeah, I don't resonate personally with that story of, people, my mom's an alcoholic, my dad's an alcoholic, my family's full of alcoholics. It's just not my story. I'm not saying that's not the case. It's not my story. And yeah, and so um I always kind of struggled as a kid, really I wasn't aware of it at the time though. When I talk about this part of my story, sometimes it might give the idea that it's like I was consciously aware of this stuff, but I wasn't, right? You know what I mean? I was just trying to fit in, I was just trying to be a part of. And growing up as a kid, I always just felt that I think at some level I was always the odd man out, I guess, if that, my friend, I had friends, but if they were to get rid of one of us, it would have to be me.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
I
Or
relate to that entirely. I've
yeah,
never really felt
I
like
just
I
did.
fit for most of my life.
Yeah, and what but besides that, like I don't know. I just childhood is pretty good, and it wasn't like awful or anything, and just getting up to the regular hoodlum stuff when I was about 15 years old. I really tried my first drink. I think I might have had like a sip of beer. I think the first drink I ever had, I might have been like 7 or 8 years old, but it was like a sip of a old beer can that my dad had like left in the garage. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like the bottom, there was barely any left, and I was like, "What is this beer shit?" And I think I spit it out. I don't even think I swallowed it. Um, and yeah, but the first drink I had was in about 15 years old, and I it did something for me I didn't realize at the time. At the time, what I noticed was that I felt a better sense of belonging. I felt a part of. I felt that I was at ease. My fears fell from me. It was easier to interact with my buddies. I wasn't so afraid of impressing them. I was just let loose. Do you know what I mean? And I I think even that night, the first time I drank, my mom picked me up on the side of the road puking. My friend had to call her to come pick me up. I drank too much right away. I just, there was 2/6 of a, or we were drinking out of a 2/6 of vodka, and I drank 2/3 of the thing in like one shot. Do you know what I mean? Like, bam, right off the hop.
Almost in
Like,
the hospital.
but yeah, like, but because it was just, and it just was working right away. And, the next day she's very mad and she's going to punish me and all this stuff. And, it just never occurred to me that I wouldn't do it again. It's just that I thought it was just like, the thought crossed my mind, like, are we ever going to drink again? I was like, of course we are. Why would I? Why would I not do that? That was amazing. That was an that was an experience. Bill says in his story, I had arrived. Right? I was like, I found some. Finally, there's some like lubricant, something that eases that friction between me and people, and me and just being around. And, for the and then, I just kind of started to drink, somewhat normally at the beginning. I figured out that if you drank too much, you puked and stuff like that. So I had some strategies for mitigating that. But, eventually, it started as, maybe a weekend thing every once in a while with some friends in high school. By the time I was about 21, was drinking 3, 4 days a week, pretty consistently, and always after work. So more, probably like almost every day, like, because I worked at a restaurant, so we'd get off work, have a couple, and, you know, eventually I found some other substances that allowed me. And the funny thing is, like, I remember the first time I tried. I, I guess this, because this isn't Alcoholics Anonymous, talk more about that. The first time I tried cocaine, the first thought I had was, I can drink more. It was like it was like the light came out. I remember it so vividly. It was like I was super drunk and I was starting to feel sick, and I was starting to get like that point where I'm pukey and I would need to go home, and I did a bump and the light came on. Like, it was like, there might have as well been like a hallelujah, like a moment, because I was like, I'm good. Like, I feel good. I still feel a buzz, but like, I'm not sick anymore. I feel like that euphoria, and like, but the first thought I have was like, I could drink all night. I could drink 15 more beers and I'd be okay. Like, do you know what I mean? And I very started quickly working with that. And for me, all that really did was accelerate my alcoholism. I think I was beginning to drink alcoholically by that point anyways, but all it did was, no, it's like you have the governor on the car and you just took it off. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
gonna, now the pedals to the floor. And, so then, yeah, and then within like 3 months, I was starting to get in more trouble. My girlfriend was, she found out I was doing drugs and she was really upset. And, I all I did take that was that I just didn't do a good enough job hiding it from her. I didn't even once consider that, like, I did feel bad. But I think I just felt bad that I got caught. I didn't really feel bad because I was, you know what I mean? I felt
Not
that
bad enough to stop.
that no, that yeah. And, so, then I basically, the how how my drinking progressed from there is, I think my alcoholism went through, I think I call it the 5 stages of alcoholism. And it's not like this for everybody. And, they're not, you don't spend an equal amount of time in each place. Sometimes you spend less time in one place than another. But it was fun. And then it was fun with problems. And then it was problems with fun. And then it was just problems. And then it was chaos and insanity and despair. And once I passed from one region into the next, there was no going back to the previous one. Do you know what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah, it
so,
doesn't
like,
get fun
yeah,
again.
yeah, but I spent a lot of time in problems trying to get back to problems with fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Or fun with problems. Like,
Hmm.
you know, and I didn't realize it, but yeah, the progressive nature of alcoholism was very that was important for me to see eventually, was that it was progressive. Because if all the only thing that happened was I lost a job every couple of years, or my girlfriend broke up with me, I would have made that deal. Do you know what I mean? If that was all
Oh,
that happened to
I
me,
do.
I would have made that deal. I would have that been, yep, sign that form, boop, yeah. But that's not the only thing that happened to me. And yeah, so then once I started finding the stimulants and the drugs, that it just quickly kind of fell off. And was getting really bad in Victoria, so I tried a geographical cure and went to Nanaimo, and then went to nursing school in Nanaimo, and for the first year, uh, I did really good. Kind of got my, like Bill says in a story, kind of, the goose hung high, like, and I for like a year walked around, everything was great. I was still drinking, but whatever. And then I started going off the deep end again slowly, and then, so the first year of school, I passed like all A's with honors. But I was at one of the nursing finals. I had been up for like 3 days. I showed up to class, like did my exam, and then met my Coke dealer in the parking lot of the school parking lot, so I could pick up another bag. And do you know what I mean? And then go to the student pub right after I finished the exam. And and then so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna let loose this summer. And I think in my mind, I just thought that if I ever turned the dial up too far and the consequences got bad enough, I would be able to turn it back down. Do you know what I mean? And so that summer I really went, really let the cat out of the bag. My roommate, who I thought was a bigger partier than me, couldn't handle my shit anymore and had to move out. And I got a new guy to move in there, and then within like a month or two of that guy moving in there, I left because I had totally just, I spent all my student loan money on booze and coke. I had to drop out of my second year or nursing school because I couldn't even show up to class. I was taking, I was still taking my dog out for walks and stuff, but I was not giving her like the attention she really deserved. And yeah, I just felt, I was just in that place of like total despair and hopelessness, and I just was like very angry with myself, all this self-hate. And so I finally, like, I for some reason told my partner at the time what the truth was. I probably withheld quite a bit of it from her and maybe made it sound not as bad as it actually was. But it was pretty it was getting pretty disgusting. And yeah, and so I ended up moving back to Kelowna. And one of my friends at the time was in AA, and he actually introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is kind of October 2018. And so October 2018, he introduces me to AA, and I came to some meetings for a while. I read the big book. I thought I did the steps, but I kind of just like half-assed them with a friend. And I really liked what you guys said in the meeting, but I didn't. The reason I picked the topic today was because I didn't really understand what an alcoholic was. I liked what you guys were saying in the meetings and all the stuff, but I didn't like personally like identify with.
So the topic you chose was
Yeah.
more about alcoholism, which is a chapter in the big book, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just letting everybody know that so that we can roll forward with everybody knowing what you're meaning by that.
For sure. Yeah. So that topic. So I just, you know, I was young. I thought I just really thought, and yeah, I'll get into it more later, but I just wasn't really convinced. I was just like, I if I just stopped doing cocaine, I'm sure I could manage my drinking normally. Do you know what I mean? But for some reason, every time I drink, I do cocaine. It's so strange. you know? And yeah, and so I went back out drinking again, and then it got worse. It got worse than it did in Nanaimo, and I started to do some really despicable things. And I even one of the things that I'm like the least proud of, but like I had a wonderful partner that we're no longer together. to get into that part of the story in a bit, but she was amazing, and I on a 5-day coke and booze bender, like, cheated on her, with a prostitute, and was like, that was not, uh, yeah, I don't know, like, it was just like I started to do things I said I would never do. Right? I was crossing all the lines, every possible line I could set. You know what I mean? It was uh, uh, it's just out of there, and yeah, and so uh, what was I gonna say? So yeah, and then it got worse, and then I kind of got caught again, and I wanted to get clean, so I just kind of went in and this out of the cycle of, like, get well for a little bit, get caught, or really scare myself with an incident, get really afraid, stop drinking for a bit, and then slowly, trying to control and manage my drinking on my own, very quickly slide back into my alcoholism. And you know, so I eventually got to the point where I was like, I should probably kill myself. Like, I'm definitely a burden to the people around me. I'm absolutely useless. Like, I hate myself. I feel, disgusting. I don't even recognize myself anymore, you know? And I was like, the world would probably be a better place if I did that. But again, the same friend who had initially brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous had gone to a treatment center, and he was doing really good. And I said, well, maybe I'll try it. I was like, because I didn't really want to die. I just was out of options, man. Do you know what I mean? I was just
Yeah.
running out. I was running out of choices. Like, I was just like, and so
Well, and the
I
well of excuses and self-respect was empty.
yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. And so I ended up going to Freedom's Door, and
And that's a
wonderful stuff.
detox or a treatment center.
Treatment center here
Okay.
in Kelowna. Wonderful guys there, everything, and I stayed sober for almost a year, but I still and I got a sponsor, and I was doing the steps, but I was doing the steps 95%. There was a couple things, you know, one of the things was that my that partner that I was talked about, she had found my step 4 and had gone through it, which is a whole different thing. I'm not here to get into that, but
Mm.
she confronted me about some specific conduct that was listed in there, and asked me direct questions about it, and I still lied to her. You know what I mean? Just because I'm afraid, but I wouldn't let God have that. I was gonna take care of that,
Mm.
And it just it so then I was in AA for almost a year, and it was working still to some degree. Do you know what I mean? And I was watching it work for a lot of other people. I was watching their lives totally transform. Even if the circumstances in their lives, they're like, yeah, I don't have a job, or I have no money, or I have no car, but I'm happy. Like, I like, you know, this is just
And I'm
awesome.
straight. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was like, I just realized that if I didn't do it 100%, I was uh cheating myself of something, I think, or that I was just gonna drink again anyways, eventually. And so, but I still had a reservation, and I'll get into that in a second. So, I went to my partner, I fessed up to all my stuff for real this time, and that was just kind of the final straw for her. She had had enough. She had been like years of continual promises as this get better, this get better, this get better, and then just like, a big drop another big giant shoe, when I had plenty of opportunity before to be forthcoming about it. And yeah. And so she left, and in a strange way, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It did not feel like it at the time, and sometimes even today it doesn't feel like it. Do you know what I mean? But because what happened for me was, within about a week or two, I went back out drinking again, and in that chapter more about alcoholism. I think it's on page 33, but it says, if the alcoholic is to stop drinking, there must be no lurking notion nor any reservation of any kind that someday he will be immune to alcohol. And should be in the middle of the page
If we
ish.
are planning to stop drinking, there
Drinking,
must be
yeah.
no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. So, what would you describe as a reservation, just for somebody who's new and listening?
So here was my reservation. So, I went back out drinking again. And so after my partner left, we had been together for almost 8 years. And it occurred to me that my drinking wasn't the problem. It was that I had to hide my drinking. See, the problem wasn't that I drank, it was that I had to hide that I drank. Do you
Okay.
know what I mean? The
Yep.
problem, I was just delusional. I didn't
Yeah.
know. I just, because I had always had this reservation in the back of my mind that if I wasn't with her, it would be different. That's a reservation. If
Yep.
this thing in my life was different, it would, my drinking would be different,
And then you
right?
would then not
But
be
but
powerless.
yeah,
Powerless.
yeah. But this thing in my life changed, and my drinking stayed the same. It didn't change,
Mm.
right? So a reservation is when if this changes, my drinking changes, right? So if there's anything in your life where you thought if this changes, my drinking will change, that's a reservation, right? So that was my last reservation, and so that thing in my life changed, that relationship changed, right? And I thought my drinking would change, and it didn't. It actually stayed the same and got worse, right? Very quickly. And that totally just I was like, "What?" Like, I had all these plans, I'm single, I got this, like, house to myself, I got a cute dog, I got, like, a good job, like, I'm gonna have a great summer, and all I did was drink myself to death in my basement. Do you know what I
So
mean?
that
I
shattered your
I
illusion that the
Yeah, it just it
reservation had
it just
any
shot
reality.
exactly, exactly, yeah, and so, like, I remember thinking, like, "Okay, tonight I'm gonna go out to the bar and I'm gonna meet some people, make some friends, maybe meet some girls or whatever, and maybe we'll, like, party, come back to my place." 3 days later, I make it to the bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I don't make it to the bar for 3 days. I finally get to the bar, the bartender says, "What the fuck are you doing here? You look like shit."
Yeah.
Right? And I just go home. So, um, yeah, so then so that it just occurred to me, and then so, it was 2.5 months of that, and then I was laying in my bed after another 2, 3-day bender of none of particular note. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were all pretty bad at that point, but it wasn't, like, extra bad. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like I crashed the car or this or that happened. It was just I was just done. I don't know, like, I was just surrendered. I didn't surrender, I was surrendered. And, I was just laying there and I realized that absolutely nothing I could do would stop me from drinking. Like, there was nothing I could do to stop myself from drinking myself to death. That's what powerlessness is. That if I had $10 million in the bank, I was still gonna drink myself to death. If I lost every possession I had and was homeless, I would still drink myself to death, or anywhere in between, right? It didn't matter if you put me in India or Russia or the frickin' Timbuktu, I was gonna drink myself to death. And I was totally surrendered to that fact. It was no longer maybe that's how it is, but I'm not sure yet. It was just clear as can be. And thankfully I'd been coming to Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time, and I had read your literature and I could regurgitate it at you, but I didn't actually do any of the I didn't understand get it yet. But there's a line on page 98 that says, burn into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is he trust in God and clean house. And it was burning in my head. I wasn't even reading the big book at that time. And it was just all I could think about. you know, trust God, clean house. Trust God, clean house. That's the only conditions. The only thing I have to do. Trust God, clean house.
Hmm.
Right? And I was like, you know what? I'll give it 100% shot, and if not, I was dead anyways because I was surrendered to that first fact, right?
Did you have a sponsor at that point?
Yeah, I did, but we weren't working together because
Okay.
I was actively drinking and doing drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was like, yeah, yeah.
But I
He's
just
like,
mean like for you to sort of call someone and say, "Hey, I'm ready to apply myself," or how did that how did that conversation go for you?
yeah. Honestly, man, I barely remember that first like little bit because it was just so. Uh, but I don't. It's not that I don't remember it. It's just the first 3 weeks was rough because at the same time I stopped drinking and doing drugs, I cold turkeyed my antidepressant medication.
Oh,
So I was getting like they call them brain zaps, but like literally like almost mini seizures and shit
oh
like that
no.
for like 3 weeks. But I yeah, but I basically was like, yeah, like you know, I had done the work with him. I'd gone, from all the way through. And we sat down and we did another inventory and took a look at some of the stuff, but he's like not much has changed since we've done this together. Like you just got to like live the principle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like have you, are you so he's like you've done step 1 now, 2 is good. Let's make that decision in 3 and we'll take another look at the inventory, confess anything else we didn't talk about in 5, take a better
Mhm.
look at 6 and 7 and the 12 and 12 and then go out and go out and make my amends and then start making amends to, my ex-partner and my family and, because things got really rough there at the end. Pushing my stuff I'm not proud of, lots of stuff I'm not proud of. And yeah, like uh where is it going with that? Um Sorry, I lost my train of thought
I've
completely.
got a question for you. So just for somebody who's new to the program and maybe been, struggling themselves to
Hmm.
start off because from my perspective, because I've only known you when you've been solid in your program, me or anybody I know that knows you would say that, John works a hard program and is kind of solid in his program. But would you say that kind of the biggest stumbling block right from the start was that those reservations were keeping you from having a complete surrender?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just, and there was some other thing. I just didn't. Uh,
Like you weren't really
there,
ready to quit.
yeah, they're just. I still struggle with. There's just not a whole lot of talk sometimes in the rooms about. This is my opinion about what alcoholism actually is. Talk a lot
Hmm.
about God, which love God. God's got to be in the meetings. God is a part of the program. Like I'm not gonna that, but like we talk a lot about spirituality. We talk a lot about our feelings. We talk a lot about all those sorts of other things, but we don't actually spend that much time defining what an alcoholic is, which is the only way you actually get to do all that other stuff is if you're actually sold that you're an alcoholic first.
Hmm.
None of
And
that other stuff, none of that, or addict first, none of that other stuff matters if you can't make the admission that you're powerless or that you have this disease.
I think it was like 17 years in the making for me because I wasn't living on the street. I wasn't drinking out of a brown bag. I wasn't pushing a cart across the town. And it's like there's so much crap that isn't what, we're about to get into here.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Like that was a big thing for, I just assumed that an alcoholic was somebody who drank a lot and that
Hmm.
it looked like a certain kind of person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
I just,
exactly.
yeah, but I just, that has nothing to do with what alcoholism is.
Hmm.
I think, oh, I should have brought my big book down here. I brought the wrong book. I grabbed AA Comes of Age instead of my big book for some reason. But I think it's on the bottom of that 33 page. But um, it says, what does it say? What does the paragraph after that say?
After the one we just read.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can stop as he did on their own willpower. We doubt if many of them can do it, because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them. Because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, he will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, have been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as these who had been drinking 20 years.
And then is the next one about the women? It's
Yes.
yeah,
To,
because
do you want
yeah,
me to
so
read it?
yeah, just read it.
To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time nor take the quantities some of us have. This is
So
particularly true of women.
so that first sentence um doesn't have anything to do with women. It's the second sentence where it does. So the first sentence, they say to be gravely affected by alcoholism, one does not have to drink for a very long time or consume the quantities some of us have. So what that's saying is that the amount of time, like from 20 to 40 or 20 to 30 or whatever, the amount of time you spent drinking is not a factor in if you're an alcoholic or not, and how much you drank, whether you drank 6 beers or a 2 6 every day, also is not a factor in if you're an alcoholic or not.
Mm.
So to be gravely affected has nothing to do with time or quantity. And then
So,
it goes on to talk about women, and that's a whole other thing. But yeah, yeah.
so just for the benefit of the people out there, could you start kind of going into what you think or your experience has shown you to be the defining characteristics of an alcoholic?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I'll just finish with the end of my story there. I
Okay.
think, yeah, well, so what happened was I became sold on the ideas in this book. I became sold on that one condition: trust God, clean house, and I called my sponsor, and we just got to work right away. And like within 2 or 3 months, I had made all my amends, and helping other, I was sponsoring guys. I was taking other people through the work, and I can't not tell you how many times it saved my ass. Like, not that I ever was under direct threat of drinking, but it just saved me from everything that was going on in here. Do you know what I
And
mean?
by that saved you, you're talking about helping another addict, alcoholic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
okay. Yeah,
carrying
it
this
just
message.
I just wasn't sure that, like I wanted to clarify that for
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
else.
no, for sure, no. And yeah, so and I just so some you'll hear stuff in the rooms all the time. People say, like, you got to wait a year to start sponsoring people, or you do a step every month. That's horseshit. Don't listen to that. You'll die if you do that, probably. That's I've seen a lot of people die doing it that way. You know what I mean? Like, this is I was absolutely convinced that I was under threat of, like, immediate death. So, like, I had to take drastic action and I have to do lots of stuff. But, like, it's pretty easy shit. Like, it's just make amends.
Yeah,
Tell the truth, make
yeah.
amends. You know what I mean?
Bring
Like,
unity into your life.
it's not hard stuff. Like, it's just that we just don't want to do it. We just make any excuse not to do it because we don't want to do it. We make it sound really hard, so
Mm.
that's why I gotta wait a month or to do step 4. I gotta wait a year to do this, or blah blah blah, because it's all a bunch of crap. So the thing that saved me was getting very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and then getting a home group, having communications not just with my sponsor, but other members of Alcoholics Anonymous regularly, getting a service position, continuing to sponsor guys, like, and continuing to learn more, read more of the literature, like this book, AA Comes of Age. You can't see it, but
That's-
it's it's a wonderful book, and kind of describes, like, the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, from our founders kind of perspective, and then it has a bunch of appendices from all sorts of doctors and chair people that aren't alcoholics themselves, but have just been like a witness to this thing. And yeah, and so speaker tapes, like, just surrounding yourself with stuff, like, I just meetings, it's all the things, like, but but very from the beginning understanding that, I wasn't after time. You know, I had watched a lot of I'd seen a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous with, like, 20, 30 years that were, like, absolutely miserable. Do you know what I mean? Just, like, no joy, no hope, no still self-centered in the extreme, like, you know, and they're just like, "Yeah, my life's been absolutely shit for 30 years, but at least I don't drink." And I'm like, "That doesn't sound like anything I want. Anything I
Yep.
want." You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'll pass on that, thanks very much, but, but I saw a lot of people who were doing this thing, who were really practicing these principles in all their affairs, working these steps, helping other people, that, they might be having a tough week, tough month, tough year, but they were still service. They were still experiencing joy in the middle of pain. I didn't know that was like a thing that you could experience until
Mm.
I remember having that experience very profoundly, and being like, "Whoa, this is what they're talking about." Like, being in pain but experiencing joy at the same time was it's just an experience you can't miss. If for any new people listening or anything like that, if you, the people who have experienced it know what I'm talking about, and the people who don't. You just gotta get some for yourself. And the only way I was, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps, and developing a relationship with the higher power. The one that I choose call God, but I don't identify with any particular religion or anything like that. God's a lot easier to say than spirit of the universe. So yeah,
Although Spirit of the Universe has a nice ring to it.
it's more formal. I think if I want
Yeah.
to get all if I want to get all formal with my
Yeah.
creator, sure. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I
Yep.
just God's like the nickname. That's just the word we use for that thing. So
And
but yeah,
when,
that's kind of my story. And since then my sobriety date is December 9th, 2021, because I smoked weed for a little bit afterwards. But even then I was working AA doing the stuff, and it became very apparent to me that smoking weed was not trusting God and cleaning house. It was trusting weed and cleaning house. And I, still need to put my hand in God's hand. And since that day I haven't had to have a drink since, or any other mind altering substance like marijuana or anything like that. So, yeah.
and what would you say, like when you hit your rock bottom moment there, right?
Mhm.
What was the moment that was like the pivotal moment where that recovery fire was lit and you knew that it was going to work for you this time?
I didn't. I had no clue. I had no
It
I
was just
like
desperate repetitive motion for a bit.
well, no, like it was just like it I don't know how to say it. It's like I the only thing I've ever heard that bears a remote semblance to how it felt was if anybody's like a history person or is interested about like wars or soldiers in war, um a very, very, very common experience for frontline soldiers in like World War I and World War II, where they were like surrounded by chaos and death and misery all the time, was them already fully accepting that they were dead men walking. Like that there was
Mm.
not, do you know what I mean? That they were gonna die in the war. There was nothing they could do about it. Do you know what I mean? That they were dead and that they were just here today. Do you know what I mean? And that's
Yep.
exactly what it was like with me. It was just like, I realized I was just a dead man walking. I was just any day now I was gonna overdose or kill myself in a drunk car accident, or do you know what I mean? Like I was just dead. I was just a totally dead man walking.
So what
And
made you want to extend that then? Like if you kind of got to the point of dead man
uh
walking, right?
yeah.
What made you want to continue that? Or what how did you sort of see a light to go towards versus just walking off the plank?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that I had been to AA for like 3.5 years at that point.
Okay.
I had seen it work. So like, if step two says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And really all
Mm.
that is like, do you believe that's what working for these people might work for you. It doesn't have it. It might not work for you. Who knows? But are you open-minded to the possibility that it could? And I was like, sure. That's what kept me
Mm,
going. That's why step two is so important. Because if all I have is the dead man walking thing, I'm just gonna
yeah.
walk off the plank. Do you know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
walk off the plank.
That's why I
So
was asking because I like it
yeah.
that it just seemed sort of directionless for a second there, you know?
Yeah. Well, and totally it is. And so I think that's just the importance of like the program is the program uh kind of funnels that total, because what happens in step one is that we're totally crushed, and when we're crushed, we're open. I'm totally open-minded. My mind is like,
Mm,
I'm just sure, man, that sounds good, you
yeah.
know, whatever, gonna die any day now, but like, that sounds great. And so it gave me something to latch onto, because there's something in me that, I didn't want to die. Just
Yeah.
because I was resigned to death didn't mean I was looking forward to it. You know what I mean?
No, I do know. And I mean, coming out of the hospital myself, I felt that same, like I felt like this relief,
Hmm.
like my
Yeah,
surrender occurred that it was like, I don't have to fight anymore. And
yeah,
then it was like, I'll try whatever.
yeah.
I'll
But
try whatever because I don't want to go back to that.
exactly. But I think that's why we got to get to the dead man walking thing first. Was that
Yeah,
like right? Like yeah, like totally sure.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I saw it first. For that was for me like I came to AA and people were like, their stories sounded similar to mine. You know, excuse me. The manifestation of their disease might have looked different. They might have drank more or did more drugs or blah 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 or you know but the core feelings behind it and that progressive nature of it was exactly the same. And so they said they did these few simple things, and that you couldn't deny it. Like you look at, they're just glowing. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do. When I went
they're just
into
like,
treatment, I was looking at these people who were shattered 4 to 6 weeks before me.
hmm
And I was like, look at them just laughing like you can.
yeah, yeah, totally. And so I was like, you know what, whatever's working for them might work for me. Yeah, I just
Mm.
became willing to believe that maybe I'm just not different. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe I can be helped. Do you know what I mean? If I can die, if I am, if I was wrong about my ability to control my drinking, maybe I was wrong about my conclusion that nobody could help or nothing could help me. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like I damn nearly died of terminal uniqueness.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking when I was like, well, okay, there's AA and then there's NA and then there's CA. I'm like, but nobody did the exact same combination as me. And they don't know what it's like to feel like and I remember just having that as one of my reservations for a
hmm
while, you
hmm
know?
Yeah, totally. No, absolutely, man. I relate to that a lot. That's like the first time I left AA was because I was like, yeah, all these people are drunks, but like they're fucked up. But I was only a drunk because I did coke, and now I don't do coke anymore, so I'm fine.
Yeah,
But you know
exactly.
what I mean?
It's like
Yeah.
these weird little justifications that make us so unique that nobody's going to understand our circumstances or have that path to freedom for us because we're not walking those same shoes.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, when I was ready to put that sword down, you know, I wasn't gonna die on that cross anymore. I was gonna, and so I was like, yeah, sure, maybe I'm just like them. Why not? I remember something I said to my sponsor. This was before I got sober, but this is when he knew I was starting to get it a little bit. Was that when I looked at him and I was like, maybe everything I've ever thought is wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's like
I,
they say you just have to relearn everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was just like, and not wrong in the way that like there was something wrong with me, but the way one might be wrong on like a math test. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
not
Maybe,
bad wrong, incorrect wrong.
yeah, yes, exactly, exactly that. And um, yeah, and I just remember being like, yeah, maybe everything I thought is wrong. And he was like, that's we're getting somewhere. You know? And I didn't really hold on to that idea, but definitely did do today. It makes me think of the set aside prayer. That's really what that is. Maybe, help me set aside everything I think I know.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe just like help me set aside all the things I think I know, like me being right about this person, or how they think about me, or what kind of person I am, or what AA is, or who this job, all that stuff. Just help me just let go of what I think I know. Because as long as I know something, I'm gonna have that experience, and if I keep having that experience, I'm just host. I don't know.
I really felt that near the end of my addiction, in that, you know, I lost my curiosity, and like similar to what you were just saying about knowing, like if you think you know things, then you're not seeking how everything's working around you so
Yeah,
much.
it's very closed-minded. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
one of the core principles of AA is open-mindedness, right? As
yeah.
spirituality is open-mindedness, right?
Hmm.
That like yeah. Um what was I gonna say? Um do, 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 do. Yeah, I just keep losing my train of thought these days. I got so much going on in this little noggin,
It's all
but
right.
yeah, but the
I'll
so no,
keep pointing you back in the direction.
yeah, but the closed mind, like that's really what happens. Is it's like a negative feedback loop of self, right? So like in uh how how it works when they talk about step three, they say that, so our troubles we think of our own making, they arise out of ourselves. In the example, in the Alcoholics is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. What that looks like is that I'm just stuck in this perpetual loop of self-real self, and then self and self-affirming. So like I tell myself I'm a piece of shit, and then but like I'm not inviting any extra information, so it just like spirals down. And so, and then it becomes very a very warped perception of reality, because I'm not considering any other information. I guess the picture I get of that is that we all have a map of reality inside of us, right? And uh if I just try to draw the map from memory, I might draw a valley over here when there's no valley. I might draw mountains over here when there's actually a river. Do you know what I mean? I might draw a highway over here when really it's a dirt road. You know, and in in the and as long as I'm just trying to do it from my own self, nothing on the map ever changes. In fact, it gets more inaccurate as time goes on. As things in the map do change, I'm still stuck in my old thinking. With spirituality, my job is to get that map of reality as close to the real map of reality as there is. And the only way I can do that is by getting other people to look at my map and say, does this look good to you? And they go, no, no, that's, you're wrong about that, or you're right about this, or, you know, this is a little skewed, or this is a little, or that's, well, you got to really take a look at that shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, and the more information I get, outside information I get, it starts to make it like a positive feedback loop, and my map gets closer and closer to the real reality. Nobody's map ever gets 100% accurate, but my job is to get it as close as I can.
And, I feel for myself that before the steps, I was like a fool with no tools in the dark.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, I wasn't possible to get outside of my own delusions to see my part in anything, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, um, I liken it to like with music where if I'm about, if I have a glimmer of learning something, it's like I can peek in the window and see the room.
Hmm.
But until I can peek in that window and see the room, I can stand outside of a house and never know what that room looks like. But
Hmm.
once I see into the room, now I've got something that I can like start to shoot for, to build my skill, to be actually able to eventually open that door and be in that room.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that one for sure. Yeah, and like yeah, yeah, my they talk about it in this the big book and the 12 and 12, I think. But that um you know the biggest um the biggest character defect of alcoholics by far is pride, and that there's two aspects to pride. One is the one everybody's really familiar with is uh the boastful, the arrogant, the almost like I didn't do anything wrong, it's their fault kind of pride. Do you know what I mean? Then the other aspect of pride is like the self-defeating, self-hating, right? But all pride is like a disordinate or disproportionate sense of self. So it's a warping. It's like the looking in the funhouse mirror. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
woo, when and so yeah, the program and the steps, the things like inventory, taking a look through that window. You know what I mean? It's humility, and humility is an absence of pride. And so I'm taking I'm no longer playing in the funhouse mirror, and I'm taking a look at the real mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm scared, I don't know what I'm going to see here. I'm not going to sure if I like what I see in the regular mirror, but I'm willing to like take a look, right? I'm willing to get up, look in your analogy, like look through that window, stop playing in the dark, in La La Land, and like actually take a good hard look at what's real inside, like what's actually there. And we
That's
need
right.
guidance, to do that, right? We can't do that on our own because we we rationalize.
I guarantee we rationalize. I spent my whole life rationalizing until what was occurring around me was really not occurring in the way that I thought at all.
Yeah.
And I was, I think I said it to you before and to other people, but I went into my first step four. I was like, oh boy, man, I'm not gonna get some resentments, and then here comes these apologies. Like there's gonna be like 21 people lined up to say, man, sorry, Milan, we really wronged you. Then I was like, oh, it's me. Oh,
Yeah.
it's me again. Um, can I borrow someone's phone? I got some apologies to make.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No,
Yep.
it's funny. Yeah, well, and I think that's a first demonstration of the spiritual principle that like uh fairness. Just sometimes we get obsessed with fairness. That wasn't fair what they did to me, or you know, I'll apologize to them after they apologize to me because what they did wasn't fair. And it turns out, yeah, fairness is only a one-way street. It only goes out. It doesn't come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it. So going back to more about alcoholism,
Mhm.
after your experience, what would you say that from your readings and your experience that you know uh, you think are the defining characteristics of an alcoholic?
Um, there are a few. Character, I guess maybe we'll talk about symptoms
Hmm.
first, or instead
Yep.
of, yeah, we'll
Sure.
talk about symptoms. Character. characteristics, I mean, alcoholics come with varying person characteristics, but there are some defining ones or some uh very broad ones like defiance. Most alcoholics are pretty defiant. Um,
Yeah.
Not
But
all,
like, I
but
mean, like, what would you say separates the alcoholic from the non-alcoholic, who are both people who drink alcohol?
yes. So on the I think it's 20 on the bottom of page 20, it starts to define the moderate drinker. It goes
Yeah.
moderate drinker.
Hmm.
Yeah. So kind of those next so from 20, bottom of 20, 21, and like halfway to 22, that's kind of like the really meat and potatoes of it. So I'll kind of describe it in a couple different ways. But uh so the moderate drinker is somebody who can uh drink just a little bit at a time. They can take it or leave it, or essentially, right? They're the kind of people who like, you know, at most have like a glass of wine or two a week, and that's it,
They
right?
could actually do
Right.
the experiment of controlled drinking and
Yeah,
stop
yeah,
every time.
and they don't have, the yeah. So I guess it pays to go back a bit, and so in the doctor's opinion, um, Dr. Silkworth talks about an allergy. That there's this certain group of alcoholic people, so that there's a classification. So there's a certain group of alcoholic people called chronic alcoholics, which is synonymous with the term real alcoholic. So there are many different types of alcoholics, but the type of alcoholic that we are, and that the book Alcoholics Anonymous is concerned with treating or helping, are chronic alcoholics. Now, chronic alcoholics, they kind of their disease is alcoholism, and the disease has kind of two main observable components to it. The first is defined as an allergy by Dr. Silkworth, but you could call it anything really. But what the allergy is just like an abnormal reaction, but that means that like when I put alcohol in my body or those other substances, I develop what the allergic reaction is, the abnormal reaction is that I develop something called the phenomena of craving. So as soon as I start to consume the substances, I have this reaction inside of me, and I get this thing called the phenomena of craving. And what that is that it makes the consuming of more substances my number one priority. It, you know, when I started drinking my beers, consuming booze and alcohol might have been like eighth on my list of things to do today, right? But as soon as I start drinking, and it goes to the top of my priority list. And no matter how bad I try and get it down there and put it where it's supposed to be, it just stays up there. It just goes. It's like you ever try to like hold like a basketball or like a beach ball underwater or like a volleyball, and then you let go and it fucking shoots right back up to the top.
Yeah.
It's like that, but with our desire to consume more. And so we do all sorts of things to satisfy this phenomena of craving, right? But the phenomena of craving can never be satisfied. So it's like a catch 22. But what that looked like for me was that I started doing cocaine because when I would drink a lot, I would puke and pass out, and that got in the way of me consuming more alcohol. So I found substances that got rid of that part so that I could consume more alcohol, right? So that's what the phenomenon of craving looked like for me. Now, if all alcoholism was, or what chronic alcoholics, the real alcoholic suffers from, was that, we wouldn't have a problem. We would just, so the second part has to be that I have a like a mental illness. Like I can't stop myself from taking the first drink, right? So like if if all I have is like an allergy to peanut butter, what's the solution to that?
No peanuts.
Don't eat peanuts, right? So if all I have is a problem with substances or alcohol or whatever, then the solution would just be don't do them. But obviously there's something else going on there because I can't stop myself from doing them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can't stop yourself from starting that cycle.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And once I start, and I know from having the allergy, once I start, there's no stopping me. Right? So the real problem is how do I not start? And yeah, so the second part is like a mental insanity. It's a or insanity doesn't sound so what the word insanity means is the inability to distinguish fantasy from reality, which means that I do not have the ability to separate my fantastical ideas that I can drink like a normal person, or that this time it's going to be different, or this time I'll only have a few, from the truth, right? From the reality that I can't drink like a normal person, and it's going to be I'm not going to drink two, I'm going to drink 20, you know, and
Yeah.
this is off to the thing. So so what it means when I can't separate those two things is that they don't look so right now, because I've been restored to sanity, those look like two very different, distinct ideas, right? Can control my drinking, can't control my drinking. But when I'm in that mental blank spot, they blend and they look like the same thing. They look like reality, right? My fantastical ideas look like my real ideas, and my real ideas look like fantastical ideas. They're all mixed up, and I can't sort them out. And you know, so and yeah, so basically that's kind of what makes the disease is it's this like very insidious uh feedback loop, whereas like once I start drinking, I can't stop. But even when I stop drinking for a bit, I can't stop myself from starting again. You know,
Yeah.
I can have every intention. And there was so many times where I said I was through forever and absolutely meant it. Or was like this, I'm not going to drink today. And then in like 2 3 hours, I was at the liquor store because something you know, today's a bad week to stop drinking, and I forgot my buddy's coming to town. Do you know what I
It's
mean?
her birthday
It's her.
Saturday.
Yeah,
Like if I stop now, then I would have to restart on Saturday. So Sunday's better.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I just all sorts of stuff. And then and then and then all earnestness and sincerity, waking up the next day and being like, "How did I ever get started again?" I was. I told myself I would stop. How did I? You know. Um. So the problem that chronic alcoholics have isn't alcohol. Their problem is not alcohol. Their problem is that they're the insane mind around it, right? So the same way that, if there was a guy who was allergic to peanut, but he couldn't stop eating peanuts, what's his problem? It's not peanuts.
It's
It's
a
that he's fucking
consumption issue.
it's that it's there's something wrong with his brain.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's clearly allergic to peanuts and he keeps eating peanut. There's something wrong in here. There's something wrong
Yeah.
with his mind,
Yeah.
right? And so that's like the same with us. And so
That's the insanity.
yeah, and so the only solution, so there's two doctors in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Basically, they're people who were specialized in the treatment of alcoholism and drug addiction. Um, One was Dr. William D. Silkworth, and he was the chief medical officer of the Towns Hospital in New York City for 30 years, which was a hospital that specialized in the treatment of alcoholism and drug addiction. And the other doctor is Dr. Carl Jung, who's like one of the most celebrated psychiatrists of the 20th century. He had his own hospital and everything like that. And these two guys came to the same conclusion on chronic alcoholics independently of each other. They had no communication. They didn't talk. They were just two leading experts in the field, but had, didn't really know about each other very much at all, if at all. And they both basically said that there's absolutely nothing they could do for alcoholics, that these people were doomed apart from a spiritual experience. And
And they said this before AA started or
yeah,
afterwards?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
before.
Just for
Um,
people to know the timeline.
yeah, and it's before it's there. Doctor or Carl Jung tells Roland Hazard this around page 27, and the doctor's opinion is a preface in the front of the book, so you can read that. Um, and yeah, so this is long before Alcoholics Anonymous, and yeah, the only thing that they had seen work for these people was like every once in a while they would have what they considered a phenomena, but was they would have this spiritual experience, but it was they couldn't seem to induce it with psychiatric efforts. It was just like a total phenomena. It's just a random thing that happened, and they were just like, "Well, shit, that guy had that experience." Like, but so they were trying to reproduce this in people, but they just had no effect. And the only thing that Dr. Silkworth said that he'd seen work was Alcoholics Anonymous. Like once he started to see it go, you can read the dot. He says, you know, he says he says as years of working as psychiatrists in this hospital, we have found that nothing has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these people than this program that's now starting amongst them. This whatever this is, and that's like the beginnings of Alcoholics Anonymous, um, which is pretty heavy coming from a guy who's literally treated tens of thousands of alcoholics over his life, you know, and been like the head of that hospital for a while. And so, um, yeah, so I guess so that kind of defines so the chronic alcoholic is somebody who has that physical allergy and that strange mental insanity around the first drink. And yeah, they're very distinct but hard to differentiate for the average person from a acute alcoholic or a heavy drinker. um so an acute alcoholic is somebody who physically has formed the habit of drinking. Their body has become physically dependent on liquor, right? They might even drink 15 beers a day more. Do you know what I mean? They drink a lot. But once they're physically separated from alcohol and that craving is gone, like that physical craving, their body's physical yearning for that substance, they can moderate or control their drinking. They have no problem. Do you know what I mean? Because their problem is alcohol. Their problem is that they have developed a physical dependence on a substance. But once the physical dependence is removed, they're good. The chronic alcoholic, their problem isn't that they have a physical dependence on alcohol. It's that their mind is fucked up. Their mind is not good. It's broken. It doesn't have enough power in it to stop them from drinking. And that, yeah. So that's kind of the difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember so many times saying over the decades, "Oh, I'm not drinking," or like, I'm having one more, and I'll meet you at home, Michelle." And that was
Mm-hmm.
like a day to 3 days later, I'd come rolling in with some pile of chaos surrounding me,
Yeah.
and you know, I liked how you broke it up into the 5 stages earlier, and when you were talking about that. You know, it kind of made me think back to my life and think about how many years that it was like the fun and the problems, and then the problems with the fun, you know,
Mm,
and that phase. And I stretched that phase out for 17 years. And a big part of it was definitely not being able to define myself as an alcoholic because I could stop for my white knuckle period of 20 months or a
yeah.
year or 8 months and that, you know. And so I'm really glad you came on today and wanted to talk about this subject with people, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's a big thing. Yeah, because too, like, so that's telling me that like my if I c- even if I can string together some period of sobriety, that isn't sufficient proof that I actually have control over my drinking. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Um,
100% know that.
yeah. So, uh, yeah. But it's tough. It's tough to get people to see that, you know, it's usually so that's kind of why alcoholism's a disease, and it has to have that second part. There's something like mentally wrong with them, because if all it was an allergy, we don't call people with peanut allergies diseased people. They don't have a disease.
Yeah.
They don't have a peanut disease. They have a peanut allergy. Right?
Hmm.
Alcoholism's a disease because it's got that second component to it, but that makes it uh, destructive beyond the individual's capacity to control it, right? Because I can control my peanut allergy. I can't control the alcoholism thing,
Hmm.
right? So um that's why it's a disease. And then the disease is, as described, is pretty hopeless, right? It just kind of gets worse as time goes on because, you know, I can it's there's lots of allergies that are like that. Some people will start off as kids with a peanut allergy that is might make their skin itchy, but it's not too bad. But by the time they get to an adult, their throat closes up every time they touch a fucking peanut, right? And so that's the kind of progressive nature of ours as well. It's like, I started drinking, it wasn't too bad, I might drink a little too much or get a little too wasted or puke a little bit, but it was too fun. But by the end, it was just like I'm mixing vodka with wine and you know what I mean? Doing all sorts of wacky ass shit, like and just like shaking, trembling. Use more to get the effect, right? Because I drink for an effect, right? And that desired effect gets harder and harder to reproduce as time goes on, and I become willing to sacrifice more and more to try and reproduce it.
Well, that's one thing is I think sometimes, you know, like normies would drink something for flavor. And I was like, I'm drinking it to gulp it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
would drink it for I would yeah, like I would drink for flavor if it also was like, but for some reason the things that tasted good to me were the 7-8% beers, not the 5-4% one. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like the things that tasted good to me were the ones with the more booze, the higher booze content. That was odd.
yeah. It's kind of like a nicotine free cigarette. I was like, why would I smoke that? like,
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You're like,
like,
yeah,
I'm
like
like,
the
where is my hit of the nicotine?
like the near beer. Yeah, it's like you don't see it like just drinking near beers because I like the taste. I think that's yeah. Anyways, that's a whole different topic, but
Yeah, that feels like a reservation in the making.
yeah, just I don't know, it's just like I don't drink near I just think yeah, maybe some people like it because they do like the taste, or maybe that's whatever, but yeah, for me it's just personally it's just like I don't drink near beers for the same reason I don't do near cocaine.
yeah. yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, is there more that you want to say on that subject?
Uh no, I guess maybe I had a question for you in the sense of like, do you think that there's any helpful ways that you have kind of identified alcoholism, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, in that vein of like trying to like communicate that to like a newcomer, like what actually is an alcoholic and what
I think for
not what's
myself,
not, but
like
no.
I think a really important thing that I held on to as like a reservation of not calling myself an alcoholic was definitely I hadn't lost enough,
Hmm.
and like my physical situation, and like if my physical situation, I still at home,
Hmm.
I still had a family, I wasn't living on the street. And, like even before I went into treatment, I was like, man, am I going to be going somewhere that's like full of like almost like prison type people or something? Like, like, I mean, for real, I had no
Yep.
clue what I was walking into. And I walked in and it was like, oh, there's just a bunch of people like me having the same problems in their life. And, what one thing though that I think is really important to me is that you don't have to be someone that drinks every single day. Like
Mhm.
you don't like yeah, the days get closer and closer, whatever, but I could have saved myself, you know, literally 17 years knowing, like I didn't have to have a physical dependency on alcohol to be an alcoholic,
No.
and I think for me that, like I remember knowing some people, they would wake up with the shakes, they would almost have seizures if they didn't have a beer in the morning. And I'm like, well, look at, I'm not that. Like, I would put
Yeah.
myself on this pedestal, like, yeah, like, I would, um, but I definitely could not have practiced controlled drinking at any point. There's an for anybody who's new out there, they say in the book, oh, to anybody in doubt, try to practice some controlled drinking. It's like kind of an exercise in futility if you're really an alcoholic, where, try having one drink and then stopping. Try having two drinks, then stopping. I continue, ad infinitum, but, I don't know that I ever could have stopped after one.
Yeah. Well, control is about precision, right? And so, like, yeah, with that experiment in mind from the big book, like when guys are unsure, I'm just like, I'm like, go out and drink 2.5 beers every day for a month, and that's it. If you ever drink more than that, that's not control. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
And
it's
you
not
just
just one, it's two and a half. So you
two and
actually
a
have to
half.
put that third one
Yeah,
down
yeah.
halfway through.
If you really have control, do you know what I mean? Somebody with control over their drinking should be able to have 2.5 beers every day, no problem, right?
Yeah,
Shouldn't even be hard.
yeah.
It shouldn't be difficult in any sense of the word. Do you know what I mean? If you really had control, and the look on the faces is always funny to watch them go. Mm.
And once the night started with me, it was consumption until there was just nothing left. Like people who had stocked bars, I was like, stocked bars. That's just what the stuff I don't like that's left that somebody's left here, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's why it's such a sometimes when we're working with a new guy, it's important to be more specific about our story or share like certain things so that they can relate if it's something that they've kind of gone through, whatever. But i- in AA, or we share in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, because right things like when we get really specific and we start slinging around war stories and meetings and stuff like that, that can really drive people to the rooms because they go, well, I'm not I'm not like that guy. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Whether they think they're better or worse, they go, oh well, that guy, he said that he's an alcoholic because he drank every day. Well, I don't drink every day, so I must not be an alcoholic. Do you know
And
what I mean?
I think too, I had probably had the misnomer that it was also based on your activities. Like I did some really embarrassing stuff if I drank hard liquor or
Hmm.
wine, and some really socially tragic things that I'm, definitely, you know, some loved ones were hurt in some really ignorant moments in my addiction. But um, I fooled myself a lot of years thinking, okay, I could drink like 75 beers and be almost as straight as somebody because of my metabolism. But it was when it was at a higher concentration, like wine or hard liquor, that was when I did really undependable things. And so because I could keep myself on beer for a long time, I felt like I had this element of control. Like
Mhm.
it really fooled me for a long, long time
Yeah.
that about from actually acknowledging that, you know, that yeah, but once I had one beer, and if there was a box of beer, that box was gone. You
Mhm.
know, like that inability to stop was, it was just something I wasn't aware of, you know. And I remember even when I went into the treatment center and was describing, you know, why I thought I wasn't an alcoholic to the counselors. And they were just
Yeah.
like, they're like, classic. Like, they're just like,
Yeah.
they're like, you know, so what? It's like, so what you didn't shake in the morning, or so what you could take some days off, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, like everything you're describing otherwise. And I could have saved myself, you know, 17 years of denial and shame and, you know, even just further punishing my body health wise. Like, I think it's what you wanted to talk about today, you know, I was really enthusiastic to talk about because I wasted 17 years after a point where, you know, had I actually even just you know, read the book through once to see that, I would have gained a different insight.
Yeah. Maybe. Or maybe we just would have made more excuses.
Yeah, but you know, yeah,
Like, no, I only say that because I agree with you. I think it's in a weird way, I agree with you and disagree with you.
mm,
Not in like I think it's important to discuss it because so it's available for the new person and so that maybe we help somebody who might have missed the bus kind of deal. But when I really reflect back on my drinking, I think you could have beat me over the head with it and I still wouldn't have got it. I still would have had
yep,
I still would have just been like, yeah, no, but I'm different somehow, or this
yep,
is da da da. You know, I would have shaken it off, or I just don't think I could have got it till I got it. You know, I really don't think that there was. I don't think I could have got it 2 years earlier, even if
yep,
I had, even if it's like if I had just told the truth to my partner, I could have stayed. So I used to think that to myself for a long time, and upon some like good reflection and some help, the thing, it's like no, you couldn't have because you were a lying sack of shit. Like that's just what you did. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just who you were. That's just where you were. You weren't available to change. Not that I was a lying sack of shit. Like that sounds like I don't like myself or hate that version of myself because I don't. It's just that like that's just who I was. I was just a screw up. It's just I couldn't have got it
mm,
because that's not if I could have, I would have. I didn't want it. Do you know what I mean? 2 years
yep,
earlier, I still wanted to be a good person. I still
mm,
wanted to be a good partner, a good friend, a good son, a good all that stuff. I just wasn't capable of it. I was just
mm.
the bad. I was just that was just my part at that time. It's not like during that time I wanted to be a dirtbag. I didn't want to be a dirtbag. You know what I mean? I wanted to be a
Yeah,
good guy. I was just a dirtbag then. That was it.
yeah. I think. Well, I at least for myself, I feel like I would have had less to hide behind.
Yeah, for sure. And who knows, right? Like I don't actually know the answer to that question. All I know is what is that the
Yep,
truth is right. Yeah,
yep.
yeah. But like
I just I feel like it wasn't until I went into treatment that even I knew the correct definition of alcoholic or addict.
for sure it's not widely disseminated. I don't know. People don't talk about it. A lot of people don't know too. A lot of people just that I what did I hear the other day? I thought it was really good, but even it's something like Alcoholics Anonymous is filled with lots of heavy drinkers and they're loud. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of, not everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people, there's a lot of people who come to meetings and put their hand up and say, I'm so and so, I'm an alcoholic, and they're not. They're heavy drinkers who just, really like the meetings, and that, they use AA as kind of free group therapy, and that's it. But that's not the original intended purpose of AA. Now maybe sometimes that's what it is, and that's fine. But yeah, like, whereas, yes, but yeah, there's lots of people who, yeah, it's not to say that I'm right or they're wrong or anything like that. It's just that, like, there's a there's a distinction between the real alcoholic and the heavy drinker, and I think that some people don't know what that distinction is.
And if a heavy drinker wasn't drinking because of coming to those meetings, don't you think there's a societal benefit for that?
Oh no, I think they're welcome. Like Alcoholics
Yep.
Anonymous, their only our only desire, or our only, was it
Requirement for
for
membership.
membership, is a desire you don't even have to be alcoholic.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a real alcoholic. You could just be a alcoholic. You could just be an acute drinker. You can be somebody who, you know,
You could be a
doesn't even
normie who just wants to not be a
just,
normie and
yeah,
have
yeah.
not have one drink.
You can just be a total normie, non-alcoholic who just doesn't want to drink.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Our only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Yeah.
You could have had one beer in your whole life and said, "Nah, I just don't want to drink anymore," and you can come be an AA member. You don't
Yeah.
have to, right?
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and I don't mess with that. That's the way it is. But like, I just think that the distinction between the two is
Mm.
important. It's it's not really that important if you're anybody but the real alcoholic.
Mm.
Because if you're a hard drinker or a normie who just wants to stop drinking or whatever, if you don't know that distinction,
Mm.
it doesn't affect you. But if you're a real alcoholic and you don't know that distinction, it'll kill you,
Yes. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I think that distinction is very important.
Awesome. I think so too. I'm really grateful you came on today and spoke about that. So, pretty much we've got to wrap it up in a few minutes. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Uh, no, I think you it. What's it gonna say? Yeah, no, I don't think I really have much. I think that was just really good, and I just want to thank you for your time and your energy, and thanks for always being a treat to talk to. We always have good talks and stuff like that. So
I love you,
yeah.
brother, and I really hope to have you back on the show. I wouldn't even mind, making you a regular co-host, and we could kind of go over a myriad of some of the stuff that we've already talked about and are learning about together right now.
Mm.
Haven't said it yet, but John is my sponsor, and I love him tons. But yeah, I'm really grateful you came on today, and this podcast is designed, hopefully to help somebody who's new or just looking for a little bit more, dialogue about recovery from some people who are straight right now and grateful that they're straight. Inside myself, I've felt like a freedom from being straight inside recovery, hence the freedom rising in the podcast and the phoenix in it, kind of symbolizing, coming like new life. And so, I really, but I've also seen some of these episodes with the co-hosts and the hosts, we've actually done some healing for ourselves. And sometimes just talking about it can, it can do something for us too, as well. And so, the podcast is all around here to be a positive outlet and something to check out for people out there. So I
Mhm.
love you, brother, and I'm super grateful that you came on. If you'd like what you've seen, please subscribe and share this podcast and give it a like. help us get to 100 followers if you could. We're looking for interaction with our audience. Please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan, South Okanagan, Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you, and I'm hoping to create slideshows of the Freedom Rising in your life, so please send any photos of you flourishing in your life as a result of recovery. Please tune in next episode for more recovery fun. See you later, everybody. I love you all.